Good evening, everybody. This is your man, Rodney Knight, and welcome back to myself, and welcome to the first episode of the Dirty Talk Show. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to give you my opinions and thoughts on certain sports topics, whatever you want me to talk about. So I just want to give you guys my opinion on last week's Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. But first off, before we get started, I want to send my congratulations once again to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their second straight Super Bowl. So two things that happened with the Kansas City Chiefs: they won their third Super Bowl in 5 years, and also they become just the first team since the 2003-2004 New England Patriots to win back-to-back championships. So obviously that's going to be a great accomplishment for the Kansas City Chiefs. And obviously going into the next season, the main goal is, are they going to be the first team in NFL history to THREEPEAT as Super Bowl champions? Obviously, they're going to have the big targets on their backs. So obviously the main question is, can they get it done? Will they do it? Can they do it? Who's going to be their biggest and toughest opponents going into the next season? So if you're talking about the American Football Conference, the AFC and the NFL, who's going to be their biggest opponents? So obviously, in my opinion, their biggest opponent going into the AFC next year is obviously the Baltimore Ravens, who they just beat in the AFC Championship this year. So obviously you got the Lamar Jackson, who you're going to have to deal with, who just won his second MVP in the NFL. They're probably going to be the biggest threat going into next year, because obviously you got the offense led by Lamar Jackson. Also, you got a great defense by the Ravens, and the Ravens are known for always having a really good defense. If you remember back in the days in the late 2000s, you had a monster three people led by Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, and Ed Reed. And the Baltimore Ravens has always had a great defense. I don't remember the last time that the Baltimore Ravens didn't have a great defense. And obviously you got Lamar Jackson coming into his own. So I think that's probably going to be the toughest opponent that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to deal with next year in order to have a chance to win their third straight Super Bowl. So not only it's just the Ravens, I think also the Buffalo Bills could have a chance to compete for the Super Bowl next year in the AFC. It's really up in the air. But I think the top three teams that could compete with the Kansas City Chiefs next year is the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, and surprisingly, the Cincinnati Bengals. Because if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals these last 2 years, they were Super Bowl contenders. If you remember in 2021, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs to make the Super Bowl that year, but they unfortunately lost to the Los Angeles Rams. And then last year, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And obviously, the main reason why the Cincinnati Bengals did not make the playoffs this year is because Joe Burrow got hurt and missed majority of the season. So I think going into next season, if Joe Burrow can be completely healthy, I think the Cincinnati Bengals will go back to their winning ways and eventually will go back into the playoffs. And if everybody stays healthy and the Bengals keep winning and doing what they did the previous 2 seasons, making back-to-back conference championships, they're easily going to be one of the top teams to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So now the question is, with the Chiefs is, can they win their third straight Super Bowl? So going into the offseason this year, one of their toughest choices is, are they going to re-sign their defensive captain, Chris Jones? Because Chris Jones in this offseason is going to be a free agent, and he is a very important piece in the Kansas City Chiefs lineup. He is their leader. Like I said, he's been on the team for many years, and obviously he's going to be a key part of that team. So they really need to do everything they can to keep Chris Jones and obviously make him happy, so that way they could bring him back on the train and try to get that third straight Super Bowl and probably become the best dynasty in NFL history. So not only you have the Kansas City Chiefs with the biggest question, can they three-peat as Super Bowl champions? Also, you got the NFL draft coming up in a couple of months. So obviously going into the draft, the consensus number 1 pick is going to be Caleb Williams out of USC. So obviously he's going to be the number 1 pick, but who is going to draft him? So obviously at the moment right now, the Chicago Bears for the 2nd year in a row has the number 1 pick. So if you remember this previous draft, the Chicago Bears had the number 1 overall pick, but the Carolina Panthers traded DJ Moore and other draft picks to the Chicago Bears to get that number 1 pick, which they ended up using to draft Bryce Young. So now the question is it going to be the same thing all over again? Or is the Chicago Bears going to keep that number 1 pick? Now the question is, if they do keep that number 1 pick, what are they going to do? Are you either going to trade that number 1 pick and get some other draft picks and find a way to maybe get someone to help out Justin Fields in the offense? Or do you draft Caleb Williams number 1 overall and trade Justin Fields and maybe bring in some other assets to the team? Obviously, that's going to be a difficult question to answer going into the offseason. Also, you got the draft combine coming up soon. So in my opinion, I think what the Chicago Bears should do is just like they did the previous draft, trade that number 1 overall pick, bring in some other draft picks, and also you could try to keep yourself in the top 10 so that way you'll still have a lottery pick. I think the biggest thing that Chicago Bears need to do going into this draft is draft a wide receiver. And obviously, the number 1 wide receiver going into this draft is Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out of Ohio State. I think if you draft Marvin Harrison and pair him with DJ Moore, I think that's going to be enough weapons for Justin Fields so that way he can try to flourish with the Chicago Bears. Now, if they do end up doing that, will the Chicago Bears be a playoff team? I really don't know, because in their division, you got 2 teams who had just made the playoffs this season with the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. And the best team out of that division right now is obviously the Detroit Lions, because they just went to the NFC Championship where they lost to the San Francisco 49ers. So obviously, with the Bears, there's going to be a lot of discussion going into this upcoming draft in the next coming months. Are they going to keep Justin Fields and trade that number 1 pick, or are they going to draft Caleb Williams number 1 overall and trade Justin Fields? It's going to be a tough decision that the Chicago Bears are going to have to face in this upcoming draft. So we're just going to see everything that's going to happen, and it's going to be crazy. It's going to be very crazy. So I'm going to give you guys 1 video a week on the Dirty Talk Show. I'm your man, Rodney Knight. Hope all y'all have a good day, and I'll see you later. Adios.